Hi everybody, this is Michael with Memoria Press. I'm the director of our Foreign Languages Department, and I'm here to talk to you all a little bit today about Latin. So we posted a couple weeks ago and you guys already asked some excellent questions, so I'll start with those. But if at any time you've got questions, feel free to just post in the comments and I'll try my best to address them. All right, so the first question, and I thought it was a great one to start with, was just kind of an overview of what are all our Latin programs for? You know, you open our catalog and there's Prima and Latina and First Form. What's the difference? So Prima Latina would be our most basic elementary Latin course. It can be done as young as second or even first grade. And it's really just teaching you about language. It's teaching the parts of speech to children, doing that through Latin. So we spend a lot of time on what is a noun, what is a verb, what can verbs show? And so we're combining English grammar, the Latin, just kind of whetting their appetite for Latin. Latina Cristiana would be our next program. That would be for about a third through sixth grade range. And you can start in Latina Cristiana or you can continue on from Prima. Latina Cristiana is going to get a little bit more into the actual grammar of Latin. We'll learn some grammar forms, the famous amo, amas, amad. We'll build on their vocabulary. And it's still very gentle, very introductory, but we kind of can start doing some simple translations even by the end. We can have a subject and a verb in a simple sentence. Mary walks, for example. Our next program is First Form Latin. You can, again, progress from Prima to Latina Cristiana to First Form Latin, or you can just start right in First Form Latin. All of our beginner levels like this are designed so that a parent with no Latin background can teach them. So we give you all the helps you need in our teacher manual, chalk talk, scripted lessons, all of that. And First Form is going to really dive into Latin grammar. We're going to learn all 5 declensions, we're going to learn the first and second conjugations, and it's the first in a 4-book series that eventually completes pretty much all of the Latin grammar. Henley, which you see in our high school sometimes, we use it as a supplement to fourth form, and it's a great introductory text for maybe an older student, like in 10th or 11th grade, that just kind of wants to move faster, maybe wants to get some meatier sentences. Older boys especially like it because there's lots of sentences about war and killing. So, and we use Henley 2 after fourth form, but you can also start with Henley 1 and then go on to Henley 2. So that's just kind of a brief overview of our programs. And for those of you just joining us again, my name is Michael. I'm with Memoria Press. I'm the director of our Foreign Languages Department. All right, what was the next question? Okay, this next question was, how would you recommend teaching traditional spelling and phonics alongside Latin grammar? Do you have to do one of them at the same time, or can you do them out of sync? And the answer is out of sync. In fact, you kind of want them out of sync. We do recommend holding off on Latin until a student is solid in their English phonetics. If you do that, if you make sure their English phonics are solid, that they're reading, maybe not fluently if they're second grade, but reading pretty fluently, not struggling too much, then you're good to start Latin. The question asker in this case has adopted children, and I would say the same principle still applies. Wait till they're kind of mastered reading English. If you try and teach them to read English and read Latin, any child at the same time, it can kind of mess. They're not sure, which sound or which letter's making. That being said, if you love Latin, if you want to introduce Latin early, first of all, that's awesome. Second of all, you can do that, just do it orally. Play the Latina Cristiana or the Lingua Angelica CD. Let them listen to music, do some oral recitation. They can start memorizing and saying it aloud, and then go back and introduce the writing once that English phonics and spelling is a little more solid. All right, hopefully that answered your question. I'll go on to the next person. And this person asks, can you please explain how to lead a student through the oral drills? Sure. So the oral drills are something that are in first form, second form, and even a little bit in third form Latin. And you'll see them in the lesson page or in the appendix, and it's just 10 Latin words that the student has to translate into English, and 10 English words they have to translate into Latin. These words have been inflected, which means we've changed the case or the number, so it might be portat, and the student has to say, he, she, or it carries. For the oral drills, you want this to be the last activity of the week. So they've done their workbook, they've done all their exercises, they're basically ready for their quiz. And so this is like your kind of final check of their mastery. It is oral in the sense that their response is oral. They can look at the book, at the prompt in the book, so they can read the Latin word or the English word. Just make sure they're covering up that facing page with the grammar forms and vocabulary. We recommend you do the Latin to English first, and then the English to Latin, which is how it's listed. And feel free to jump around. You don't have to do 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have multiple children, bounce between them. Or if you're teaching a small class or co-op, even better, just bounce from student to student. All right. Third question was, what is your favorite translation course after grammar and why? Sometimes it feels like fourth form is the end, when really it's only the beginning. How can we better encourage our students about what awaits them beyond their grammar work? That's an excellent question, because we often compare Latin to a mountain, and so we finish the Latin grammar specifically to a mountain. So you finish that grammar, you're at the summit. What do you do? How do you enjoy this beautiful view and really appreciate and put to use all that hard work you've put in? And that's where the joy of translation comes in, translation-focused courses. Just to share what was my personal favorite one, since you asked, was doing the Aeneid for AP Latin. I can still, even though I can't remember the exact lines, it's been a while since I was in high school, I can still remember the simile of the Carthaginians building their town being compared to bees, or Aeneas's broken heartedness as he sees panels on a door that describe the fall of Troy. It teaches you have new things to learn now. So you know the Latin language, now you can learn about poetry and rhetorical effect, and it just opens your mind to different ways of viewing the world. The opening of the Aeneid is Arma virumque cano, I sing of arms in a man, or I sing of weapons in a man. And weapons there, Arma is an example of metonymy. Weapons symbolizes, what he means is war. I'm singing about a war and a man, a hero, Aeneas. And that was really cool to me, because I never thought of war as weapons. It makes you think about it. I mean, that's obviously something that's made up of, but it really highlights the physicality, the weaponness, the hurt that is inflicted by war. And then it expands your appreciation of English in just ways that you can't, if you don't know Latin. So an example of that would be the Latin adjective ceruleus, which is where cerulean comes from in English. And English dictionaries will say, oh, it's like a sky blue or a sea blue, or just kind of like azure, or some sort of bluish color. But really what it is it's the color of the sea. It's that dark, kind of bluish green tinge, and it's used to describe Neptune, the god of the sea. And it became my favorite Latin word, and it really made me appreciate the depth of meaning that English word can have. All right, I've gotten signaled that a couple more people have joined, and so again, my name is Michael Simpson. I'm with Memoria Press. I'm the director of our Foreign Languages Department. All right, and to relate that into the second part, going back to the Aeneid and all, to relate that back to the second part of your question, I think by these are ways to encourage, show them what they can now read, examples of what they can learn. After they do complete fourth form or the equivalent grammar program, they're ready to start working on Caesar, reading about his Gallic Wars, which are really, it sounds boring, a guy's memoirs of his wars, but it's fascinating story. And it's our first real introduction to worlds outside of Rome, and to a people that were not literate, or whose literature doesn't survive, if they were, to the Gauls of France. Show them they can read poetry, learn rhetoric, rhetorical skills, read Cicero's impassioned speech. These are the fruits of all that labor they get to enjoy. So it's an excellent point. You're not ending anything. You're just getting started on the really a new stage, but a great new stage. All right. And I think my next question was, my children, this person is in 4th and 6th grade, their children are in 4th and 6th grade, are in first form Latin this year. They are learning it well, but they don't enjoy it. We'll continue Latin whether they like it or not, but I'd like to know what I can do to help them enjoy it more. And that's a really good question. First of all, I want to praise you for continuing on as the teacher. You're like, this is good for you, you're doing it, awesome. I'm going to go back to that mountain saying that I mentioned a little bit ago. In our form series, Cheryl always compares Latin to a mountain. And as someone who likes hiking, hiking a mountain is fun, but it's hard work. It is not always pleasant. And it's a challenge as you go up there. And you don't always even enjoy the benefits. I may know that the exercise is good for me in strengthening my muscles. I may know it's good to get my heart rate going and all, but that doesn't mean I enjoy the heavy breathing and the soreness and the actual doing of it. But when you get to the top, when you reach a new milestone, maybe a bench or a break point somewhere on that trail, you can look down, look back, and that sense of accomplishment that I took this huge chunk of work and I did it, I mastered it. That is empowering. That sense of accomplishment is greater than any sense of fun you could get by making it lighter or more cartoony. And that sense of accomplishment shows me, wow, if I can master this, I can master something else. It may take hard work, it may take dedication, but I can master huge bunches of material, which can be very encouraging when you go to take something even as different as, say, your organic chemistry in college, or algebra 2 or calculus. You know that you can master material if you work hard at it. And finally, we can point to, as I was giving examples of the Aeneid, and I love, you can point to the rewards that await them in the future, the being able to translate and all, and to get through, to be able to put all that knowledge to use. It's one of those things, just like when you are a musician and you're having to practice your scales on the piano or all, you probably aren't learning Latin music just to play scales. You probably get tired of the scales after a while, but those scales allow you to eventually play full musical pieces. And when you look back later, if you didn't appreciate it in the moment and it was just, mom and dad are making you learn the piano, you appreciate that, wow, okay, these hard little steps, the wax on, wax off, have paid off. All right, I think that answered everybody's questions. Do we have any new questions or anything? All right, I'll go on and move on then to just some of our frequently asked questions that come up a lot. So when we talk about our Latin courses, we talk about them as grammar first. And a lot of people wonder, well, what does that mean, grammar first? So a grammar first approach is one where you methodically and systematically introduce the Latin grammar. You initially keep the vocabulary more limited and contained. You make sure the vocabulary relates to what you're studying. So if we're learning first conjugation present tense, our vocabulary is 5 or 10 first conjugation verbs. And the goal is to lay this solid foundation that students can then build on when they get to higher stages of learning, the so-called logic and rhetoric stages. And the benefits of the grammar first are threefold. It's overwhelming for a student to try and master varied vocabulary, varied grammar forms, Latin syntax, and start doing translating all at once. They need to focus their skills and master a step at a time. The second benefit is that it's the mastery of the forms is essential. If you don't master Latin's grammar, and Latin has a lot of inflected forms, its forms are constantly changing meaning, you're just going to get frustrated when you try and translate. You're going to be frustrated looking up all kinds of words. You haven't laid that good foundation. To go back to the music example, it'd be like sitting down and with a piece of music and being like, well, I don't want to practice scales or learn how to properly play. I'm just going to sit down and figure this thing out. You might be able to do it, but it's going to be really hard and challenging. And finally, you want to introduce Latin logically. It helps. One of the goals of education is to take a body of knowledge and present it in an organized way to a child, a way that's understandable, that they can kind of wrap their minds around. And so a grammar first approach will do that by focusing on a single topic at once. Just the grammar, then just a new topic in grammar. Oh, I see we have a question.
For a family with the streaming videos and the textbooks, how much time a day would a homeschooling student need to spend in first or second form?
Great question. So your longest day will be your Monday or whatever your first day of your school week is. That's where you're going to present the new lesson, whether it's you, the parent, teaching, or the teacher on the streaming or DVD video. And that day can be about 45 to 60 minutes that day. Because you want to present all the material, go over it, and it's ideal to go ahead and start a little bit on the workbook, maybe just a little bit from each section, one form drill, just so students kind of know what to expect and what to do. The rest of your week, the middle days of your week, your Tuesday through Thursday, so to speak, you would just be filling out a little bit more of the workbook each day. At the level of first and second form, it's going to be just about a page and a half per day. And you still want to continue drilling, reciting your new vocabulary, reciting your grammar forms, but all that only takes about 20 minutes or so a day. I'd say 20, 25. And finally, your last day of the week, we typically, on a 5-day week, this would be Friday, would be your quiz day. And the quizzes should take probably no more than 15, 20 minutes. Unit tests might be closer to 30, but that would be kind of a rough approximation of the day-by-day breakdown. All right, so we have another question.
Would you please give your opinion on what to teach a 9th grader coming into a cottage school with no Latin background?
Sure. All right. Well, one thing you're going to have to address is you are in a cottage school, so you may have to play around with this. You can't necessarily change programs just for one student. But everything else being free and equal, a 9th grader could do very well with first form if they want a systematic approach, that grammar first approach I was just talking about. It's a solid introduction. Latin credits are typically based on the number of hours spent. There's no national standard for what constitutes Latin credit. So about 3 hours per week often equates to one. And you can certainly spend 3 hours a week in first form, mastering all of the material that is in there. Henley is also a good option for a 9th grader. Sometimes they enjoy the fact that it moves a little faster, too fast for the younger students in 5th or 6th or 7th grade, but an older student can move at that pace. If your cottage school has an experienced Latin teacher, I would probably lean towards Henley. But if it's someone who's not as confident in Latin, just more of a beginner in Latin teaching, I would say stick with first form. First form presumes no Latin knowledge from the teacher, so the teacher can learn right along or just a lesson or two ahead of her students. Henley does kind of suppose that you know Latin, and we have more impressive written some teacher manuals to help with that, and flashcards, but it's still a little bit more challenging to teach. All right, any other questions? All right, and then, oh, I'm sorry? Okay. All right, so I've been mentioning the grammar first method. I think I kind of wrapped up. I hope you all caught that explanation of it's the focus on the forms first, to avoid overwhelming the student, to lay that solid foundation that's essential, and to teach Latin in an organized fashion. All right, and there is an excellent article by Cheryl Lowe on the 3 ways to teach Latin, the 3 methods of teaching Latin. And we'll try and put a link to that in the comments below after this video is done if you want to read more about that method, as well as some of the other methods, and why we at Memoria Press prefer this method over the others. All right, another question I see.
Is it necessary to go through each form, or could a student easily go into Henley if they do not have Prima, LC, first form, second form, or third form?
2 parts to that. First, second, third form. You'll see that fourth form incorporates Henley, but that doesn't mean you can start with fourth form. Fourth form is using Henley as a supplement for the exercises. It presupposes you've mastered the material in first through third form. If you're wanting to just start with Henley for an older student, you can do that. However, again, it's a little bit hard to teach at home. It's really great if you can start younger with the foundation. And so I really would recommend doing the forms first. Even families in other programs that maybe require Henley, they often tell us that if they can just squeeze first and second form in before that program starts, Henley can make that segue so much smoother for the student. So not impossible, but I would lean towards doing something like even if it's just first form and then Henley 1 will really, really help the student. All right, another question?
Do you have ideas for grading quizzes in the second and third forms in a homeschool?
Sure, so for the grading quizzes, even at the level of second and third form, we're still focusing on building their knowledge of the grammar forms. And so I would definitely weight the vocabulary and the grammar forms portion more than the translations. Translation's important and it will grow in importance, but it should not be something that kills the student's grade. If he or she has mastered the vocabulary, mastered their grammar forms, but they're still struggling with translation, translation's an entirely different skill. It's a valuable skill, it's one that Latin will teach, but like any skill, it takes lots of practice. So I would definitely weight that vocabulary and grammar forms a little bit more. And then after that, typically we do our quizzes and tests by just simply totaling up the number of points possible and dividing by the number they earn divided by the number possible. For vocabulary, you might do 1 point per word. If it has multiple parts, say the 4 principal parts, I wouldn't do 1 point for each, but you could give 1 point for all of them, a half a point if they just missed 1 or 2 forms, and maybe 0 if they got it completely wrong, for example. Or you could do a breakdown of 2, 1, 0, something like that. Same for the grammar forms, maybe a point per form, half a point if they've missed something. And translations, I would probably make about 2 or 3 points each, 2 or 3 being a perfect or near perfect translation. 1 or 2 being about, they made a good stab at it. There's some mistakes, but they really clearly tried. These are more silly mistakes, or they just didn't understand. And a 0 or 1 if they just didn't even try, or the attempt shows no effort, is completely wrong. So I hope that gives you some ideas for how to weight your grades. All right, another question. Woo, you guys have a lot of questions. That's awesome.
Are there any potential changes to third and fourth form that you could share?
Ooh. We did just release this year a modified lesson plan for third and fourth form that kind of slows down third form a little bit and finishes it in the fourth form year. These lesson plans are available on our website. And essentially it was because some parents are telling us, especially at home, without that master teacher guiding, it's really hard to get through these 2 forms. So we do offer now this kind of modified lesson plan. So no changes to the text themselves, but maybe a little bit different pacing suggestion for you that you can certainly check out. And feel free to just send us an email or give us a call if you'd like to know more about those plans and maybe get a sample or switch over to them. All right, another question.
Do you have extracurricular recommendations for a 4th grade student in love with Latin?
Extracurricular. I would recommend Lingua Angelica. You don't have to do the workbook, but let them listen to the CD, start listening to that music. Music is one of the places where you still see Latin done a ton. If you have access to a work with some Latin, sung Latin being performed in your city, it'd be awesome to take a student there. If there's like a Bach Mass or something like that, that'd be a great way for them to kind of see some Latin in real life. If you're part of a liturgical tradition that incorporates Latin, seeing if your church offers something can be a wonderful way to explore it too. And also, if they're loving Latin, maybe get them some books on Roman history as well. Let them learn a little bit about these people and what they did. You might also see about your local museums. Here in Louisville, we have a museum that has some Roman tomb markers. And so it's students, even young beginner students, can see the names on there and some of the abbreviations, and that can really bring it to life for them as well. All right, I think we're okay. And then let's see, what was another common question, speaking of Lingua Angelica, is how do I use this program? That's a really common question we hear a lot. And the answer is, this is meant to be freeing, not a non-answer. It's however you want. And the reason I say that is because first form, when you get to it in Latin, Latin is hard, it's a challenge. And that needs to be where the bulk of your energy goes. Students who grasp it really well and are looking for that extra challenge, they might love having the Lingua Angelica workbook to start seeing what words they can parse and what words they can translate. But it can also just be used, just as I was telling the last questioner, just as a supplement, just something to listen to the music, to enjoy hearing the Latin. As they memorize some of the lyrics and songs just from hearing it over and over again, it gives them help with their grammar. If I know Dona nobis pacem, the song, I know an imperative, dona, I know a pronoun, nobis, and I know a Latin noun, pacem or pax, in the accusative case. So those songs can actually kind of help them, give them like, oh, this isn't completely unfamiliar, I know this. So I would say make your main Latin program, whether it's Latina or First Form or Henley, make that the focus, and fit Lingua Angelica in whatever way supplements and benefits your program without overwhelming the student. All right, how are we doing on time? All right, well, I think I've addressed all the questions that have been asked. It's some of our most frequently asked questions. It's great having this opportunity to talk with you guys and sort of give you that kind of on-the-spot feedback. I hope this was helpful to you all, and if you have further questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call or send us an email. Again, this is Michael with Memoria Press. Have a wonderful rest of your day.